Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Conversations with Masters. Today is on the topic of loving ourselves. This is part 2 of our 3-part series on this topic of loving ourselves. Everyone on this call is an enlightened master who agreed to participate in this conversation and share their wisdom and experiences around this most important topic. You can seek out most of these masters that are participating in this 3-part series. They all have unique gifts, and some of them offer services. Please look them up so you may learn more about what they offer. They are identified below in the comments section along with their website addresses. In part 1 of this 3-part series, we discussed what it means to love ourselves and why it is essential. Today, we will discuss how do we love ourselves? Do we need to learn this if it's not natural? So this series is to help us look at loving ourselves from a higher perspective. So let's get started. As I stated in part 1, learning to love myself fully and unconditionally is not something that came easily to me. It's something I've had to recreate for myself, and it's something I'm always expanding on and learning. So, fellow masters, how do we start to love ourselves?
Troy, I was very mindful of last time when you spoke about it, that you talked about this path and this journey, and I was very struck by your passion on the topic, and I was left curious to hear what those steps or stages look like for you. I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, but I'm curious.
You know, it's so funny. I get in the present so much. Sometimes my memory of what I just said a week ago, let alone a month ago, goes out the door. But the path for self-love for me, wow. The thing that starts it is to really start accepting, instead of condemning myself and taking that old energy look at, I'm guilty, I'm bad, I keep making mistakes, I'm not enough. It all of a sudden just like would be more towards, I really appreciate all the goodness that I have in me. Just the fact that I want to be a better person, that I want to do it with greater love, with greater compassion, with greater honesty. That desire is in me is really started to help me grow in this feeling that I could really be all that I want to be. Because the mistakes I was making was the mistakes that just you make along the way. But I recognize that when I'm in the heart of hearts, I really want to be a loving, good, honest, integrity person. And the mistakes I make is just part of the process of getting there. And once I started doing that, it was a falling into appreciation about things in myself daily that helped me grow in that love. Things that I appreciate that I did, things that I appreciate that I feel, things I appreciate that I'm thinking about others, that helped me kind of let that expand to now I do really love being with myself, because I see all of that is starting to emerge as to who I really am and not the human self that others thought and told me I was. I don't know if that answered that, Sylvia, but that's kind of what the process was for me.
Well, it outlines and paints a mural, so to speak, so that you can get a sense of it, which I think is probably the best that most of us can do when we're looking at a path that we've been down, and here we are in the present with a sense of the future as well. It's hard to focus on the nitty-gritty because we're a collection of tools and experiences and teachers and wisdom. And that's one of the things, interestingly enough, that I found that I was focused on in the last 24 hours was the many different aspects of spirituality and metaphysics and religion to a certain degree, all kind of come together, things we've learned and studied, and how very often there's a direct correlation or an overlap, but how we then synthesize all of that. And that's all a part of who we are. And as far as the self-love, it's interesting because my path was rather different in the respect that I don't think I was somebody who did a lot of negative self-talk, but I projected that onto others. Like, oh, they don't think I'm enough. I'm not enough for, them to be picked for baseball. Forget that I can't, hit a ball or anything, but so like the self-pity part. So it wasn't overt, you're wrong, you're bad, you're this. It's just like, oh, they don't love me. And, so that kind of thing. And when I started to recognize that, I think I started to recognize this pattern of, I would see others, I thought, more clearly. And so I would see what they were doing. And, I've since recognized quite a couple of decades ago that that's just a reflection of me to one degree or another. And it's something that I'm still working on, to be able to just observe without making it about something, giving it meaning and significance when someone does something that does not seem appropriate to me, right? And, one of the messages that I got loud and clear a couple hours ago was definitely, there really is no such thing as giving and receiving, because it's one and the same. When we label it giving, like giving love to another or giving love to ourselves, which also means receiving, it's all one, it's all source. So we just draw this distinction, which creates duality or perpetuates it, as to where is this love going? Is it coming from here to there, or is it coming from here to there? Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's just, like, am I touching your hand? Or you touching my hand? It's connected. And so last week's or 2 weeks ago's discussion about, self-love, that was one of the things that stood out to me so profoundly. It's like, whether you talk about the stewardess and the mask, the old mask trope about put it on yourself first, if you're no good for you, if you don't take care of yourself, you won't have anything to give to anybody else at some point. So hand in hand. So I think that for me, it's been about enjoying, similar to what you said, Troy, recognizing and enjoying when I have an opportunity to extend myself in love and kindness to another, whether it's at the grocery store checkout or with a coworker or a loved one, and just doing it because I know this will make them feel better. But guess what? I feel good. Yeah. So you could just say, it's for them, it's for me, it doesn't matter, it just feels good. And theoretically, it feels good for all. So how is that bad?
Yeah. I have something, thank you so much, Sylvia. I have something I want to share that's popped in that's really powerful. For the viewers, like starting 3 years ago, we created sacred circles of like somewhere between 5 and 11 people. And there are people who really are seeking the highest in themselves. And I've just realized how powerful that has been for my self-love over the last 3 years. When I'm in these groups with people like each one of you who've been in these groups with me, I'm really among incredible people that are seeing me and letting me come as I am and be who I am. And I think there's an enormous transformation in me just being among that caliber of vibration of people who really love who they are, they love, and they're connected with their divine selves. And I'm just realizing it's totally transformed me, because I've been able to find anytime I want to be in any company I want and say anything I want and see and hear and feel I am loved and I am loving. Like you said, Sylvia, both giving and receiving. That has been an enormous transformation in my self-love. It's just gone up to, exponentially from that experience over the last 3 years, particularly the last year or so. I just feel such love in the presence of other masters, and I love for them and love from them. So.
And that's how I feel in this group. That's why I'm so grateful to you all. It's interesting too, because we talked about giving and receiving is the same. And also, Deborah and I had a conversation about this earlier today about we're the only ones. So I find it much easier. I brought this up with a question that I asked to counsel through the Sarah Landon group about it's easier for me to love other people than to love myself. And it doesn't really matter where all these stories, where it comes from when you're whatever, but that's what I found. So I'm also way less judgmental with other people besides myself. So part of my big journey, and I've learned, is that it all comes through me. And maybe Deborah, you might even want to say more. And that's part of what the council said. If I'm loving them, I'm loving myself through them. I'm seeing myself, because everything comes through us. So I don't know if somebody else wants to talk more about that, or Deborah, you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in, because maybe it's just the way I look at things. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's beautiful what Sylvia says about the giving and receiving. Does it really matter? But as you've just said, Sandy, there is only you. There is no one else outside of you. So in Troy's case, that transformation that you're talking about, the transformation happened within you, which is why it created the circles outside of you. It happens within us first. It's the inside of us that creates the outside of us. So that's why self-love is so important. So you made those shifts on a non-physical level, Troy. You did that yourself in whatever way you were doing it. And then that's getting reflected back to you. And obviously we all have a high level of self-love anyway, otherwise we wouldn't be in groups like this. I mean, it's just blissfully beautiful, and that sense of connection that you're talking about. I mean, I'm feeling it, like they're all goosebumpy. And it's because we have that level of self-love within ourselves, and we are creating through that frequency, the beautiful frequency outside of us. So it's interesting, which one comes first? It comes first within. But if I can just say something else, I know this sounds a bit silly, because I was thinking with my self-love journey, you were talking about the different stages. I think, like many people, mine started with Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, and reading that book. But the time when I realized, I think it's a gradual process, self-love, obviously, but I think the telltale sign is, again, something Troy said about enjoying being on your own. Because I remember never liking being on my own. I had to have company all the time. And, at the weekend, I would start drinking and stuff like this, thinking that's what you do at the weekends. And then realizing, no, I'm just numbing the fact that I'm on my own, or something. So, yeah, learning to be on your own, loving being on your own, not getting enough of being on your own. I think all of that is the different stages of self-love. And I think for me personally, the time when I realized was a time when I was sitting in the garden, and I just found myself staring at a rose, and I fell in love with this rose, and the petals were glorious, the colors were glorious, the smell was glorious, and I was the rose and the rose was me, and I was just high on just staring at this rose. And I kind of looked at myself from outside and was like, all right, good. There's something going on there. You love everything that's outside of you because you love what's on the inside, right? Sorry.
Well, I think that we all have a different way of coming at it, like in your case, and maybe for a lot of people, it's that sense of loving to be by yourself. I never had that problem because I was an only child and I loved being by myself. I had no other concept of, being the only young child in my immediate family and so forth. Um, but it flip-flopped in other ways. So whatever approach you take up this self-love mountain, it may look slightly different. It may come from the outside, it may come from the inside, but it's all one and the same, and I'm thankful, Troy, that you brought up these groups as playing a great role, and I think that's an excellent point. But I would add to that, because folks that may be watching this, going forward, may have this notion that, each one of us is happy and feels self-loving or loving towards other 187% of the time. And it would be nice if that were true, but sadly, for me at least, it is not. And there are times where, the wisdom and the tools are there, but somehow there's a layer of something, energy, suppression, just something that needs to come up and clear out. And it's loving yourself to be able to accept that you're in that space, for number one. And then also having the opportunities to meet with other masters who you can spend time with, bring your resonance up again with, and perhaps, if it's appropriate, even share, that you're in a space where maybe you're not where you'd like to be, and everybody gets it and they don't judge it. And it's accepted. So again, it's the reflection back. I accept it in myself and I'm getting accepted by others. And it just nurtures the whole cycle. So lest viewers think that it's only, when everybody's feeling good, we get together, and when, then when we get off, we're crouching in our, closet or something. No. But yeah, it's like, if you feel love in any given moment, it's love. It's love of myself. It's love for you guys. It's love for my cats. It's love for my country, my home. It's love.
And to that point, Sylvia, I like that. Yeah, we are all masters. We are all expanded, but we're also always expanding even more. There's always more. There's always more. So thank you for that, Sylvia. So
Yeah,
yes, please,
Sylvia,
please.
I agree with what you're saying.
Oh, Dawn.
I know that when I get into that spot, that little second where I'm judging or not feeling love, I realize that I'm up here. And I just bring it back down to here, and suddenly, hmm, back in it. And so being up here and judging and being out of the now moment becomes less and less. And the more I'm in my heart, the more I can love everyone and love myself and accept myself. And because there is only love and there is only the now, and that
yeah,
helps.
that's a really good point. I mean, presence makes all the difference. I did drop off just for a minute to get my connection stronger here on this, but I had done a track, a channeling, and got some information. And the first thing that I wanted to say was put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And I know somebody else has said that, and it's just really, so important. So it's worth saying again. And I got 3 pieces. The first one was just really how, there is this experience, we're human, and we have these stories that we move along through, that we've chosen on some level, and they like grow aspects of ourselves that are glorious and beautiful, and also aspects of ourselves that, you know, we might feel shameful about or we want to suppress. And a big piece is just allowing, for me, to kind of step back and observe, and then love those parts of myself. Like, love the part of myself that is struggling, or that is not the ideal of what I want to be. And it becomes through that loving and accepting of myself, it dissolves into love. Or, you know, it's not like I'm saying, well, now I don't have these human characteristics that are, you know, unsavory, but that in loving them, they're not what is running the show. They don't, you know, they show themselves once in a while. Like Sylvia said, sometimes you don't feel fabulous, but as Dawn pointed out, when I drop down into my heart, you know, and I get present, I can fully be in that place. One of my practices, and I think I've probably said this on every call we've had, is to talk to myself. And it's part of my daily practice. It's like, you know, one of my challenges has been related to my body. And, you know, I look at, like, now we're going through a bunch of old material since my dad died. And there's like all these pictures, right, of the family. And we all look at these pictures and go, wow, we look so much better than we thought we did, or whatever, more radiant, more thinner, whatever the thing was. And to just like start to step back and go, well, that's now too. And just love my body, like full accepting and loving every cell in my body, and actually have that conversation, like talk to myself every day in a very conscious way, and then bring that more and more into not just my meditation, but my daily experience. And then the other piece, which in a lot of ways feels the biggest, is perception. And one of the tools that I use all the time that I teach is, we call it perceptual states, but there is a tool that's very simple that you can just shift into the perspective that you wish to have in a moment. And I feel one of the most valuable pieces of that tool is the ability to become neutral, and then choose how I want to perceive the world, or a specific situation, a conversation. And in that, there's so much love. So a lot of times I do go from that neutral position into seeing through the eyes of the heart. And then it just allows for me to be loving whatever is in front of me. And it's like a flow of energy, you know, the energy just moves from that place. And it's also taking responsibility for my perception. And then again, that's a very loving place for me to be within myself, is when I'm taking responsibility for what's going on, instead of looking for the limitation of, you know, victim, perpetrator, rescuer, or judgment, or how I could put these certain lenses over a situation and then wallow in the self-pity or, you know, suffering. And instead step back, shift my perception. And being with groups like this, it's supported me in my journey of loving myself more, and it encourages me, like, as I've been going through a rather difficult last 2 weeks now, with my father dying and my mom and her dementia and what that triggers in me. It's like these interactions that we're having help me remember what's true and get back to that place, and remember the importance of the presence within.
So that's beautiful, Blissa. You know, I seem to be hearing from everyone too, that it's a choice. Like it seems like everyone in every moment, like a choice in the moment. You know, whether you're coming to your heart, whether you're looking at us, whether it's receiving or giving or choosing to love other things or others, choosing that it comes. And I think somebody else said that too, you just stop. And you, as you said, Blissa, maybe you become neutral and then you make a choice. And we do have a choice about this, right? We can choose to love ourselves or not.
Yeah, in reality, like our perception creates our reality. So if we can pause and get back into our hearts, into the present moment, then we can take that higher perspective and create a reality that really feels like so loving and so rich, so luminous.
I'll share something, a perspective that I helpful to transform, and still in the process of it. And I'll give you a very short story or illustration. And Troy knows this because he was there. We were on one of our calls, and we were with another master, and it was her birthday. And she told the story. It was her birthday that day. And she said, "Oh, look what I did. I made my own birthday card." And she showed us her birthday card, and she made it and sent to herself her very own birthday card. And she showed it to her daughter, and her daughter said, "Loser." You know, like that's, isn't that loser that you would have to make your own birthday card? So my point or what that means is that my perspective was, I felt like I had self-love, self-worth, self-love, self-appreciation, or self-care. But my thing was, but you're doing it because nobody else will. So it's second choice. You have to self-love yourself because, you know, you didn't get it from a parent or caretaker or whatever you want to call it. And so it was, yeah, I take care of myself or I love myself. But it's because it's like second choice. Because, you know, because you can't get it from somebody else. And so you have to get it from yourself. And so it was like that teenager saying, "Loser."
Yeah, like making it come from lack instead of it being a beautiful thing to do. Like,
yeah, like that's all.
Love yourself first, and if anybody else loves you, right?
Yeah, oh, that's all I've got, self-love.
That's interesting because I do believe that's how most of us have had experiences of, you know, that's how human generally experiences, like, oh, it's not okay to love yourself. And we spoke about this in part 1 too. It's not okay to love herself. So it's interesting that that's a perfect illustration of that the first thing her daughter does is, "You're a loser because nobody else did this," instead of glorifying that, how wonderful it is that she loved herself. So we have it kind of backwards, I think. And we have it backwards. And fortunately, we're not all still there. But that's where we're coming from, a lack that, oh, nobody else loves me, so I better love herself. And so she was like, it's important I love myself and make myself a card. That's so beautiful.
And even then, she, even with the daughter saying what she said, she absolutely loved the card she gave herself. Mm-hmm. She was so happy because she picked the photo, you know, she really loved the card. And so that's the beautiful thing is she started, it didn't matter how anyone else reacted. She really knew that she loved herself.
Mastery.
I think kudos to her.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. I think Ahmet, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I would like to add something to it. I'm sure there are so many ways, maybe countless ways of loving ourselves. One of the ways that I rediscovered to love myself is to go into the spirit realm. When I take 3 deep breaths and close my eyes and connect myself to the spirit realm, I really experience the unconditional love. If I connect with fairies, and I will get amazing response from them, how much they are full of love and the way they express their love to me. At the beginning of channeling, at the middle of channeling, at the final of the channeling, they repeat and over again, they love me. And then go to angelic realm and channel an archangel, let's say Uriel. And the first thing Archangel Uriel will say that how much he loves me. I said, oh my God, these old guys are really love me. And then you go to Ascended Masters realm, and then they do the same. You go to extraterrestrial realm, you channel Palladians or the other beings, or you go to light beings realm. They all love you very much. So it will remind you that everyone have unconditional love for you, and then maybe it's time to pay attention to yourself. So how much love we are reflecting to them, because all the universe is loving us. So we make sure that we deserve that love and we reflect that love back to them. So when I feel like I need some help, I just close my eyes and dive into the spirit realms and experience the unconditional love with them. So that's one of the ways that I use.
Well, that's beautiful. I love that.
I use that a lot as well, because every connection, that's the first piece. It's like, we love you so much, and I feel it. I feel it so strongly. I wanted to say something about the card, and then that sense that the daughter has, like, well, you have to do that for yourself, because no one else wants to. Even if that's the way that you choose, that you embark upon this incredibly important work as a human, is that you don't get a love, you're not in a relationship, for instance, like myself, being single. If I chose to go to really explore self-love because of that situation, because I don't have a partner who is loving me unconditionally, it doesn't really matter what the pathway in is. The importance is that we then go in and begin to really love ourselves, and then it becomes self-fulfilling. Like, we know why. We grow that within ourselves, and it's so incredible. But there can be ways that we turn to that do come from lack. Like, it was lack that brought me into fully coming into my spiritual journey and understanding the value of myself, was originally from not believing I was worthy, or not seeing the truth of who I really am fully.
I love that. You're exactly right. Thank you for reminding us of that. It doesn't matter the path that we get there. As I'm single too, and yeah, I have to do things for myself if I want to, but which is okay, because it still gets me. It elevates me to higher and higher expansiveness. So whether someone's in my life or not, as I think Sylvia mentioned the very first part one, we love ourselves regardless of whether there's someone or not, because if we depend on them for the love, that can go away like this. So it's important we bring it up for ourselves. So thank you, Blissa, for reminding us, okay, whatever the path is.
I recently read a quote. Don't remember who said it, but it basically was like, your obstacles are your path. You know, to use those as a way into spirituality instead of trying to, you know, smash them apart and go around and dig under and, you know, resist, basically, right? It's like, whatever that is, it's like, that's your gift. Dive in, dive out, and then you're here, more or less.
Totally. And when we do really bring this, like for instance, yesterday I was doing a shamanic journey and it was about claiming the gifts that I've really grown throughout this last year. And I really felt this very strong message of, I feel absolutely whole. And when we feel absolutely whole, what are we going to magnetize into our lives but other beings who feel whole? And so when we love ourselves and we can really, really see ourselves and love ourselves as the full spectrum of and allow all that we are, that's what we then magnetize into our lives. So it, even if it was coming, you know, years ago from a certain place that was less savory, we're bringing in through the effort and through the attention and the presence, we're bringing into our lives people like y'all, you know, like I've magnetized a bunch of incredible people into my life, especially in the last 2 years, you know, through the amount of self-love and just deep inquiry and letting go of all the roles, all of the ideas of who I am, and allowing just the being of who I really am.
Yeah, so perfect. Yeah, that's another thing Deborah and I were talking about earlier today. She was saying that, yes, we have to vibrate at a higher level if we want to attract people at that higher level. You attract whatever level you are, and look at you all. So at the moment, we're all vibrating, which I'm so grateful for. I just want to bring up too something about the connection between loving yourselves and worthiness. You know, worthiness does not mean a sense of entitlement. It means feeling truly worthy for everything just because of who you are. So I think, my thinking is, can you feel worthy if you don't love yourself? And I know what I think, but I'm curious what you all think about that. How difficult is it to feel worthy if you're not loving yourself?
You may convince yourself you're worthy or try to, but whether you in fact are experiencing that, I think is questionable if you're not able to love yourself.
Yeah, that feeling of worthiness is going to be coming from outside of you. So that is very tenuous. It could happen, you know, anyone could say you're not and you're out, because unless you have that self-love, it's all dependent on what comes your way to affirm whatever that feeling is.
Yeah.
Yes.
They go hand in hand on a
Just
certain
like
level.
the card.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Just like the card. She was not put up by her daughter saying loser.
Yeah. And what were you saying,
It
Blissa?
didn't matter what she thought.
Yeah.
In a set, for me, it's like it goes hand in hand. Like there was a certain point where I was really, you know, years ago, one of my big pieces was not good enough, and so I really worked with valuing and recognizing the inherent value in who I am, and it helped to have reflection, like students and mentors, teachers giving in my children, or you know, whomever, my community, seeing my value and reflecting it back to me. But until I really dove into loving myself more and more, which it's like somebody, Sylvia, I think said, it's a constant, it's a work in progress. It's a journey, but the more I love and accept myself, the more I just I realized the truth of my value. And without, when that piece wasn't as strong, it's still the value piece, rely more on that external validation, like Troy said. So I see them as like, they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for a long time, I was trying to feel worthiness without the loving myself more first. And not that you can't get there, but I realized I was missing that piece of loving myself. And that makes the worthiness so much more attainable and easier to hold on to than just convincing myself that I'm worthy.
Yeah, it's like,
Mhm.
when you love yourself and you really love yourself, it's not a question of whether or not you're worthy of that love. And like Ahmed said, when you can connect into other realms and you just feel this downpour of love, it's there. I mean, there's a certain, for me, it's like it affirms a worthiness from a different dimension. It's like, oh, like I'm here for a reason. And there's an inherent worth in that.
Well, interesting too, Blissa, you mentioned before that about attempting or working towards being the person you want to be, and sometimes still having lapses in what you refer to as unsavory or something like that, less than savory, which is, I think, a fascinating word. And I'm reminded that when I am, really experiencing that self-love and self-worth, someone can come into my sphere and, challenge me for whatever reason. And when I'm not feeling worthy and loving myself, as you were saying, hand in hand, I will react defensively or maybe counterattack, because I'm buying into their feedback instead of being squarely rooted in my own knowing of my worth and my value. And
Sharon, were you going to say something?
My favorite, or dealt with. Okay, the worthiness thing, I've just sort of been able to embrace that. And my favorite illustration is this concept. The concept is that worthiness is so intrinsic. It's so, it just is. Mm-hmm. So you can't feel, it doesn't matter if you feel it or not, because it just is. It doesn't matter if you know it or not, it just is. And my understanding, quit giving up trying to prove it. You can never prove what is, because it just is. You can't prove it. You can't disprove it. You can't make more of it. You can't take it away, because it's so intrinsic. You can't do anything to it, because it is just so intrinsic, all it is. And then my favorite illustration or story or way to know about that is when I saw someone do the little illustration, and they just took a dollar bill and they said, what is the value of this dollar bill? Well, a dollar bill, the value is $1. Then they took and crumpled it, and they slammed it on the floor, and they stepped on it, and they picked up the dollar bill. And so they said, what is the value of the dollar bill? The value of the dollar bill is $1. You can't do anything to it. You can't get it dirty or crumple it up or try to give it away. And someone says, I don't want that dollar bill. That doesn't change the value. The value just is, no matter what the dollar bill goes through, or if it gets crumpled or stepped on or rejected. So I just remember that illustration that was taught, that was witnessed in my son's rehab when we went to rehab with family. and you go through the family with the rehab, and that was one of the teachers did that illustration for everybody to their viewpoint, about what self-worth is. You are so worthy, you can't prove it, but it can't be taken away, and all that I just said. So I just thought I would share that.
No, I think that's awesome. I love that. And also for me, it's like not only to see yourself as that dollar bill, no matter a crumble, whatever, but to remind me to see other people that way too. So I love that illustration. Thank you.
Okay.
And it's through the self-love that we have, like, that knowing really grows. It's like, oh, I am worthy. Like, that's where I like that handhold or that connection between the two. It's like the more you love yourself, the less there's any question of your worthiness, in a sense, or at least that's been a part of my journey.
And that is also said in that phrase, I'm not enough or I am enough. I mean, enough means I am that I am. And that phrase, I am not enough or am I enough, is actually separating yourself from who you are. Because just the I am is enough.
Oh, so you're talking about the word in between breaks it up, so it separates you from who you, okay.
Just enough, just the word takes it away from the fact I am.
Yeah.
And just the I am itself is enough.
Yeah, that would be the intrinsic. I am, right?
I am.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And that's a phrase I've fought with for decades. Am I enough? Am I enough? No, I am.
I am. Wow, beautiful. So we're at the end of our 45 minutes, so I'm just going to open if anybody has anything else they want to share. Please do. I think this has been amazing.
Well, the last thing that just popped into my mind as I think Blissa and Sharon were chatting back and forth was that, how so many things intertwine in our spiritual growth. Just as we talk about self-love and can we have it without self-worth, it's like as you start building your self-love and as you start building your self-worth, all of a sudden, like, I'm putting boundaries into place because this is not okay anymore. Or I'm defending my boundaries and I'm doing it for me, not because a therapist told me to, or it's what I read in a magazine, but it's like, wait a second, this is not okay with me. And so it's just like every piece of the pyramid has its spot and supports the whole growth process. So it's so hard to just pick one thing and say, okay, this is what this is about and this is what that's about. But it's so interconnected. So I think that goes back to what I said at the beginning, how, over the course of our experience in this body, we all have tended to gain different tools, experiences, and teaching, learning, experience, exposure to the world, and so forth. And each feeds together into that growth experience, like the sun and fertilizer and rain and all of that, to grow this beautiful, rose bush that you can then stare at and bliss out on, or blissa out on.
I like the bliss out part. Awesome. Thank you for that. Anybody else have anything else they want to say before we conclude this part 2?
I would say that Sylvia's point about boundaries is, I think that's a really important part in self-love, especially as you're growing that love within yourself. And really, when you say, this doesn't work for me, it's part of choice, it's part of perspective, but boundaries are a piece of that journey, and they can be really important, especially as you begin to really wholeheartedly start to prioritize loving yourself. boundaries become a piece that allows for that as a tool. I wanted to say
Great. Absolutely great. Okay, so next week, part 3, we're going to talk more about how we love ourselves, and we're also going to talk about sacred rituals, which I think is another part of it that will elevate us also to the next level in loving ourselves. So thanks, everyone.